හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Wednesday the 27th of December 2023. Sri Lanka first. Let's collaborate for a prosperous and united Sri Lanka, says the President. Special statement to be made on reconciliation in March. High-level visit. Japanese Finance Minister Tsuneichi Suzuki to visit Sri Lanka next month. Talks to be held with the President on restructuring Sri Lankan debt. Curbing the spread. Surveillance strengthened across the island, taking the spread of the JN.1 COVID variant and the influenza into account, reveals the Health Ministry. Promising outlook. Financial experts says economic prospects for 2024 are promising. However, points out risks with elections due next year.
There's also the danger of politics and that we may exit an IMF program.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
නියම මෝල්ට් සාරය සමග මැලිබන් මෝල්ට් ටයිම් රුපියල් 750ක් පමණයි.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm AdaDerana joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now, in your top story tonight, President Wickremesinghe emphasized his commitment to safeguarding the rights of all citizens and expressed a desire to swiftly resolve lingering issues related to reconciliation. Addressing the centenary celebration of the Gurutalawa Muslim Central College, the head of state revealed plans to make a special statement pertaining to the matters of reconciliation in February or March next year, following his meetings with political and religious leaders. Speaking further, President Wickremesinghe once again extended an invitation to all political parties, calling them to join hands in achieving a solution to the matters of reconciliation and building the country, setting aside party affiliations.
The centenary celebration of the Badulla Gurutala Muslim Central College was held this morning under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
අපි ඔක්කොම ශ්‍රී ලංකය කිව්වහම තමයි අපේ රට ශක්තිමත් වෙන්නේ. විශේෂයෙන්ම තුර තියෙන දෙවඩ පස්සේ යුද්ධය අවසන් වෙලා සමහර අයගේ ගම්මාන සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම නැති වෙලා. වන සංරක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව ගත්ත පියවර නිසා. ඒ නිසා මම තීරණය කරා 1985 තියෙන සිතියම අනුව ක්‍රියා කරන්න. ඒ සිතියම අනුව ගම්මාන තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ගම්මාන දැන් වනාන්තර වලට යට වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ගම්මාන යලිත් ඒ ජනතාවට පදිංචි වෙන්න ඉඩ දෙන්න. එයාට තියෙන අයිතිවාසිකම් අනුව ඒ ඉඩම් බෙදලා දෙන්න. එක කතා කරගෙන යනවා එකට එකතු වෙලා ඉරුකුණා මලේ ප්‍රදේශයත් ඒ වගේම දියුණු කරන්න. ඒ වගේම පාස්කු ඉරිදෑන් පස්සේ සමහර සීමා යොදවලා තිබුණා ඉවත් කරගෙන යන්න ඕනේ. පොත්පත් ගේන එක, ඊජිප්තුවෙන් කතිකාචාර්යවරු ගෙනෙන එක, අන්න එහෙම කාරණා කීපයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ කාරණාත් විසඳ ගන්න මොකද මුස්ලිම් ආගමික අධ්‍යාපනයේට ඒ වැදගත් කාරණා. මද්දසා කොහොමද ආගමික පාසල් පාලනය කරන්නට නීතියක් කෙටුම්පතක් සකස් කරගෙන ගියා. ඒක මම හිතන්නේ ඒක වැදගත් ඇති කරන්න අපි පිළිවෙන් වලටත් මෙහෙම තමයි නීතියක් දාලා ඒවා පාලනය කරන්නට අරගත්තේ. ෆෙබ්‍රුවාරි මාසේ මාර්තු මාසේ විතර අය බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා සම්පූර්ණ ප්‍රකාශයක් කරන්න. ඊට ඉස්සෙල්ලා ආගමික නායකයොත් මුණ ගැහිලා අපි දේශපාලන නායකයොත් මුණ ගැහිලා මේ කාරණා 3-4 ගැන සාකච්ඡා කරන්නට ඉන්නේ.
Now, meanwhile, the Japanese Finance Minister Tsuneichi Suzuki will be visiting Sri Lanka next month for a 2-day official visit. During his visit aimed at strengthening bilateral ties, the Japanese Finance Minister is expected to meet President Ranil Wickremesinghe to also discuss Sri Lanka's debt restructuring efforts. His visit comes after the official creditor committee, including Japan, agreed to restructure Sri Lanka's debt a month ago. In a bid to strengthen the bilateral ties between Japan and Sri Lanka, Japanese Finance Minister Tsuneichi Suzuki will be arriving in Sri Lanka for a 2-day visit on the 11th of January. During his visit, the Japanese Finance Minister is expected to meet President and Minister of Finance Ranil Wickremesinghe to discuss matters pertaining to Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process. Further, he is also expected to meet key government officials including Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena. Last month, the official creditor committee, which includes Japan, India, France and Hungary, agreed to restructure Sri Lanka's debt. The assurance granted was instrumental for the island nation to complete the first review under the Extended Fund Facility program and unlock its second tranche worth nearly $337 million.
The successful conclusion of the debt restructuring process will help Sri Lanka gain access to funding by Japan's International Cooperation Agency or JICA, enabling the completion of crucial development projects in the country, such as the construction of the second terminal at the Derana International Airport. Prior to his visit to Sri Lanka, the Japanese finance minister will be visiting Cambodia on the 9th of January.
Now in other news, Secretary to the Ministry of Health, Dr. Palitha Mahipala, says that surveillance against the spread of respiratory illnesses have been strengthened island-wide following the World Health Organization's advice on the spread of the JN.1 variant of the COVID-19 virus. Dr. Mahipala further says the Medical Research Institute currently has an increased number of samples being tested to detect COVID-19 and the influenza in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, commenting on the increase of measles patients in the country, Dr. Mahipala said a special program to vaccinate children between the ages of 9 months to 15 months will commence from January 2024 in a few hand-picked districts in the country.
Even though the WHO declared that COVID-19 no longer constitutes a public health emergency of international concern in May, it recently classified the JN.1 variant of COVID-19 as a variant of interest as it spread rapidly around the world. Considering the limited available evidence, the additional public health posed by JN.1 is currently evaluated as low at the global level. However, the WHO said all countries must continue to track the evolution of these viruses to tailor their response. Commenting on the current situation of Sri Lanka, Minister of Health Dr. Ramesh Pathirana and health officials said all precautions have been taken and the country has strengthened the health surveillance infrastructure to identify and mitigate respiratory illnesses.
JN1 කියන ප්‍රභේදය පිළිබඳ ඉතාම විමසිල්ලෙන් පසු වෙන්නේ ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් පසු විපරම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගනිමින් පවතුන ඒ නිසා අපි ලංකාවේ ජනතාවට පැහැදිලිව ප්‍රකාශ කරන්නේ මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් විශේෂ අනවශ්‍ය බියක් මේ අවස්ථාවේ ඇති කරගන්න එපා කියන කාරණයයි. ඒ නිසා පහුගිය කාලේ පුරාවටම ඇත්තටම ඉතාම හොඳ එන්නත් කරන වැඩසටහනක් රටේ ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණා. ඒ සමගම අපි හිතනවා හොඳ ප්‍රතිශක්ති කරන මට්ටමක් රට තුළ ඇති වෙලා තිබෙනවා.
පසුගිය සති දෙකක පමණ කාලය තුළ අපි වසංගත රෝග ආවේක්ෂණ කටයුතු ශක්තිමත් කරා. ශ්වසන රෝග පිළිබඳ ආවේක්ෂණ කටයුතු ශක්තිමත් කිරීම තමයි කළ යුතු වන්නේ. ඒතර අපේ රටෙත් අපේ ස්ථාන 13ක ප්‍රධාන රෝහල් 13කින් අපි සාම්පල් ගෙන්න ගත්තා. දැන් රෝහල් 19කින් අපි දිනපතා සාම්පල් නියදි ලබාගෙන ඒවා ටෙස්ට් කරලා බලනවා. එකක් ඉන්ෆ්ලුවෙන්සා වෛරස් සඳහා සහ කොවිඩ් සඳහා. ඉතින් අපි දැක්කේ නෑ මේ පරීක්ෂණවලදී පසුගිය කාලේ විශාල වැඩිවීමක්. සාමාන්‍ය මෙතෙක් කල් වාර්තා වුණ විදිහට තමයි වාර්තා වුණේ. උදාහරණයක් වශයෙන් ගත්තොත් දැන් ගිය සෙනසුරාදා ඉරිදා දවස්වල අපි ළමා රෝහලේ, ජාතික රෝහලේ, රාගම රෝහලේ වැඩිපුර සාම්පල් අපි ගෙනත් ටෙස්ට් කරලා බැලුවට එහෙම වැඩිවීමක් දකින්න ලැබුණේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ පිළිබඳව දැඩි අවධානමක් අපිට මේ අවස්ථාවේ නැහැ. ඉතින් අපි නමුත් නිරන්තරයෙන් ඒ පිළිබඳ අවධානය යොමු කරලා තිබෙනවා.
සෞඛ්‍ය අධ්‍යක්ෂ ජෙනරාල්වරයා විසින් යම්කිසි PCR පරීක්ෂණ සඳහා එක නිර්දේශ හෝ උපදෙස් තාම ලැබිලා නැහැ කියන කතාව ඒකේ සත්‍යතාවයක් තියෙනවද? ඒ මොකක් හරි තියෙනවද?
මේ පිළිබඳ වාර්තා වුණ වහාම අපි සාකච්ඡාවක් තිබෙලා ඊට පස්සේ ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ මේ රටේ කාර්යාලයෙන් අපි උපදෙස් ඇහුවා. ඊට පස්සේ ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ දකුණු ආසියානු කලාපයේ කාර්යාලයනුත් අපි උපදෙස් ගෙන්න ගත්තා. ඒ යම් දෙයක් අපි කරනකොට විද්‍යාත්මක පදනමක් තුල තමයි ඒක ලියුතු වන්නේ. සහ ලෝකයේ අනිකුත් රටවල් වලත් කරන්නේ මේ කටයුත්ත. ශ්වසන රෝග පිළිබඳව වසංගත රෝග ආවේක්ෂණ කටයුතු ශක්තිමත් කළ යුතුයි කියන එක තමයි දීලා තියෙන්නේ. මත අපි සියලු දෙනා ඒ උපදෙස් ඒ ප්‍රධාන රෝහල් වලට දීලා තිබෙනවා. වෛද්‍ය පර්යේෂණ ආයතනයේ ඒ පර්යේෂණ කරලා අපිට දිනපතා ඒ දත්තයන් ලබා දෙනවා. ඒක විශේෂයෙන්ම වසංගත රෝග විද්‍යාංශයට ලැබෙනවා. ඒ අය අපිට අනිසා අනිකුත් නිලධාරීන්ට මේවා දත්තයන් ලබා දෙනවා.
Meanwhile, in order to confront the increased spread of measles in the country, Secretary to the Ministry of Health Dr. Palitha Mahipala further said a special vaccine program for children aged between 9 to 15 months will be implemented on the 6th of January next year in 9 districts where most measles cases were reported from.
ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ දැක්ක පසුගිය කාලය තුල සරම්ප රෝගීන් වාර්තා වෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම අපි දකිනවා දිස්ත්‍රික්ක කීපයක තමයි වැඩිපුර රෝගීන් වාර්තා වෙන්නේ. කොළඹ, ගම්පහ, කළුතර, ගාල්ල, මාතර, නුවර, යාපනය, කුරුණෑගල සහ කල්මුණ. අපි මේකට ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානයේ මේ දකුණු ආසියානු කලාපයේ තිබෙන කාර්යාලයත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඒ වගේම ජිනීවා කාර්යාලයත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඒ පිළිබඳ විද්වතුන්ගේ අදහස් විමසලා අපි විශේෂ වැඩසටහනක් සූදානම් කරා. මාස 6ත් 9ත් අතර ලදරුවන්ට තරම්ප මාත්‍රාවක් ලබා දෙන්න. මේක ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් මේ මන් නම් කර දිස්ත්‍රික්ක 9 තමයි ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ. මේ වැඩසටහන 2024 ජනවාරි 6 වෙනි සෙනසුරාදා උදේ 9 සිට සවස් 4 දක්වා ඔබගේ ළඟම තියෙන සායනයෙන් තමයි මේ එන්නත් ලබා දීම කරන්නේ. ඒ වගේම කාට හරි සරම් පෙන්නත් ලැබුණේ නැත්නම් වයස මාස 9ත් 15ත් අතර ඒ අයට ඒ සරම් පෙන්නත ලබා දීමත් මේදී අපි ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Now, 37 people were apprehended following a 3-hour search operation as the Yuktiya Special Raid Operations recommenced today after it was temporarily halted for the holidays. Meanwhile, in 2 separate incidents, several suspects, including a leading narcotics trafficker and a close associate of another infamous underworld figure, were taken into custody by the police today.
The Yuktiya special operation executed to curb and control the island-wide distribution of narcotic substances, which was temporarily halted due to Christmas and Poya, commenced this morning in Paligoda and Palivatta area in Vattala. The police K9 unit also joined the rapid operation executed today.
Good boy, Seek. Come here, come, Seek.
The police revealed that drug addicts, those who could not produce any form of identification, and several other criminals were among the arrestees. Meanwhile, 26 individuals were arrested along with narcotics during a raid operation carried out today. The raid was conducted in Vallampitiya, Kolonnawa and the Laksanda Sevana housing complex. Among them were one with an outstanding warrant against him and 2 other individuals who received one-day warrants. In the meantime, 37 people were taken into police custody following a 3-hour search operation conducted in the Paligoda area. As such, people possessing narcotics, suspects evading arrest and several other wanted criminals who did not present any identification were apprehended by the police. Further, the police marine division carried out special security patrols on the Kalaniya river in order to prevent the suspects from evading arrest. Following a tip-off received by the Varakapala police station, several persons, including a leading drug trafficker in the Mattakule police domain, infamous under the alias of Kudurushan, was arrested by the police at a nearby hotel. In the meantime, a close associate of the notorious underworld figure Hinetiyana Mahesh was arrested during a raid conducted amidst the ongoing Yuktiya operation at the Bandaranayake International Airport. According to reports, the suspect was plotting the murder of 2 local businessmen. The officers of the Katnayaka police recovered 5 rounds of 9mm live ammunition in the possession of the suspect at the time of arrest. Further, a pistol and more rounds of live ammunition were recovered subsequent the interrogation carried out by the police.
And now taking your attention back to the recent island-wide power outage, the Ceylon Electricity Board denied the statements made by the chairman of the Public Utilities Commission that it had accepted responsibility for the major power outage on the 9th of December. Dismissing the statement as incorrect, the state-owned electricity supplier noted that investigations into the matter are still in progress. Its spokesperson, Engineer Noel Priyantha, said statements in this regard can only be made following the conclusion of the investigation. Earlier today, the PUCSL's chairman, Professor Manjula Fernando, citing the CEB, said the state-owned electricity supplier had admitted that it was at fault for the most recent island-wide power outage. The CEB said investigations into the incident are being carried out by 2 committees, namely the Internal Investigation Committee chaired by an additional general manager of the CEB and the External Investigation Committee appointed by the Power and Energy Ministry. Now in some political news, State Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Janaka Vakkumara says that the government plans to offset the adverse economic impact caused by the tax hikes through economic relief to be granted early next year. Meanwhile, several opposition and independent MPs made comments today on the upcoming presidential election.
වෛද්‍යවරුන් සහ වෘත්තිකයන් රටහැර යාම ලංකාවට සීමා වෙච්ච දෙයක් නෙවෙයි. ඉන්දියාවේ වෛද්‍යවරුත් යනවා, ඇමරිකාවේ වෛද්‍යවරු කැනඩාවට යනවා, එංගලන්තේ වෛද්‍යවරු ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාවට යනවා, අප්‍රිකාවේ කිසිම නර්ස් කෙනෙක් ඉතුරු වෙලා නැහැ යුරෝපයට යනවා. මේක ජාත්‍යන්තර ප්‍රවණතාවයක්.
පාරේ යනකොට දැක්ක ට්‍රීවිල් එකක ගහලා තියෙනවා ටැක්ස් එක සිංගප්පූරු වුණාට ලයිෆ් එක සෝමාලියාවේ කියන.
වැට් එක 118ට වැඩි වෙච්ච එකට අපි කාරුවත් කැමති නැහැ. හැබැයි අපි ජනාධිපතිතුමාත් කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලය අපි ඔක්කොමත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරමු කොහෙන් හරි සහනයක් ජනතාවට දෙන්න ඕනි. ඒ සහනේ අපි හිතනවා ලබන අවුරුද්ද මුල් කාලේ ජනතාවට ලැබෙයි කියලා.
මේක අත්හදා බලන්න වෙලාවක් නෙවෙයි. මොකද්ද 2019 උනේ? අත්හදා බලන්න ගිහිල්ලානේ. ඒ නිසා 2024 ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් තෝරනකොට ඉවසිල්ලෙන් සහ කල්පනාවෙන් කරන්න වෙයි.
ඒ නිසා ලබන අවුරුද්දේ ජනාධිපතිවරණේ කියන්නේ මේ අර්බුදයට පාර කපපු ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයේ අයිතිකාරයෙක්ව නැවත ජනාධිපති කරන එකද? එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ අර්බුදය ගැන පැහැදිලි විමර්ශනයක් සහ පිළිතුරක් සහිත පුද්ගලයෙක්ව මේකට ගේනවද කියන එක තමයි අපි බලන්න ඕන කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මහත්තයා ඔහුව පක්ෂ තීරණයකට ඊළඟ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට එතුමා සහභාගී වෙනවා කියලා.
මාව ගහලලෝනේ දීන් ඉස්සෙල්ලා මට දැන් සමාජිකත්වය දෙන්න වෙලානේ දීන්නේ ඔක්කොටම කලින්. මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඊළඟ ඡන්ද ඉල්ලයි කියලා මට කියන්න බෑ. මොකද හේතුව පරදීන ඡන්ද ඉල්ලන්න හිටපු ජනාධිපතිවරයෙක් කැමති වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
අමරවීර එතුමා චෝදනා කරන ඔබතුමාත් අන්තිමේදී කියලා නවතින්නේ සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස ගාව කියලා.
මහින්ද අමරවීර මහත්මයා ගැන මම කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද හේතුව එතුමා කවුද ජනාධිපති වෙන්නේ එයා ගාවට යනවා. හෙට උදේ සජිත් මහත්තයා ජනාධිපති වුණොත් රට වෙනුවෙන් කියලා එතුමා සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස මහත්තයා ගාවටත් යයි. අනුර දිසානායක මහත්තයා හෙට ජනාධිපති වුණොත් එතනත් නතර වෙන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙක්. ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඕනේ ඇමතිකම පමණයි.
Welcome back. Now, with the government's decision to hike the value-added tax by 3% next year, predictions are that inflation would rise to around 7%. Despite the rise in inflation, Chairman of Advocata Institute, Murtaza Jafferji, claims that the overall outlook for 2024 is promising as the economy gains momentum. However, highlighting a key concern, Jafferji points out the risk of the country exiting the IMF program off the back of political changes next year. For more on this, let's hear from Murtaza Jafferji himself on our next segment, Understanding Taxes in Sri Lanka.
The outlook for 2024 looks a lot promising than 2023. We are expecting in the early part of next year inflation to go up to about 7%, of which about 3% is coming from the one-off increase in VAT, which is not necessarily inflationary because it will be fiscally contractionary for the government. They're going to collect a lot more revenue. This year, 2023, was supposed to be a primary balance deficit, but we managed to have a primary balance surplus, which means that the government's revenue collection minus expenditure without interest rate was positive, which allows it to only roll over the debt. It doesn't have to borrow to fund primary expenditure. Interest rates have been coming down, and I'm expecting the prime lending rate to go below 12%. There is room for further policy cuts because the economy is contracted. It's operating about 15% below what it was. The Sri Lankan rupee has continued to appreciate. Today the rate is 323 because the tourist dollars, we are in the high season, and also remittances have been coming in. There's an expectation that in January electricity prices will be reduced. There's an expectation globally of a soft landing which has dampened oil prices, which means that we can buy fuel at cheaper prices than we were buying last year. There is a recovery in the economy. Economic activity has improved. The biggest impacted sector has been construction. It will take a little bit time and it probably never go back to where it was because it was highly heightened. But all indications are that the economic momentum is building up. We are also finalizing our private creditor external sector debt workout. And if that was to come through in the first quarter, it is highly likely that Sri Lanka can regain a rating. It is currently at selected default. So all indications are that economic momentum and the macro stabilization has worked. The concern is going to be growth. Expectations are taking a lot longer than anticipated because we have an election that is coming up and there doesn't seem to be a clear winner in sight. There's a lot of posturing and conjecture going on. There is also a fear like previous years that Sri Lankan elections are an auction of non-existing resources. But we are now fiscally constrained because we have a new central bank law. We are under IMF program. The targets for next year also are very ambitious. That revenue has to go up significantly, something like 30%. It's highly likely it will have to come on the back of a recovering economy. Risk factors is that 2024 is a El Nino year. We are starting the year on a high because we had this exceptionally good rains. There's also the danger of politics and that we may exit an IMF program.
Now in other business news, Sri Lankan shares were mostly unchanged today in lackluster trading as gains in John Keel's holdings were offset by a drop in heavyweight Expo Lanka holdings. The CSE All Share Index ended flat at 0.00% or 10,605.16 points after falling for 2 consecutive weeks, while S&P Sri Lanka 20 edged higher at 0.29% at 3,048.19 points. John Keel's holdings rose 1.5% while Expo Lanka holdings fell 1.2%. Trading volume on the CSE All Share Index fell to 112.7 million shares from 128.5 million shares in the previous session. Equity market turnover fell to 1.06 billion rupees from 4.72 billion rupees in the previous session. Insurance sector was the top contributor to the market turnover today, while the capital goods sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers of offloading stocks worth 44.5 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers purchasing shares worth 1.02 billion rupees. Now let's take a look at how the rupee exchange rates were during the day today. Up next is Niroshan De Silva from Capital Alliance Limited with some thoughts on the current status of the country's economy on our next segment, Sri Lanka's economic outlook.
Starting with the weekly average weighted prime lending rates experienced a significant drop of 27 basis points, settling at 12.19%. In economic news, the finance ministry is optimistic, expecting gross official reserves to exceed $4 billion by year end, surpassing earlier projections thanks to substantial disbursements from the IMF, ADB and the World Bank totaling around $780 million. Shifting gears to government finances, a treasury bill auction today successfully raised 77.5 billion rupees primarily through 3 and 6 months bills, with rates decreasing by 6 and 8 basis points respectively. Additionally, tomorrow's bond auction will see the issuance of treasury bonds worth 155 billion rupees. On the tourism front, Sri Lanka welcomed over 1.4 million tourists as of last week, and there is still optimism about reaching the ambitious target of 1.55 million arrivals by year end. The resumption of charter flights and regular cruise liners played a crucial role in boosting arrivals, particularly in December. In policy updates, the cascading Social Security Contribution Levy threshold was halved from 120 million rupees to 60 million rupees. However, Sri Lanka faces challenges in shipping, being among the economies affected by higher shipping costs and delays due to vessels rerouting around Africa followed Red Sea attack. This introduces a new inflation risk to the economy. Finally, in the commodities arena, gold prices continue their surge, reaching record highs at $2,075 per ounce, as investors hedge against global conflicts and anticipate rate cuts from the Fed in 2024. Meanwhile, Brent crude prices stands at $80.38 per barrel today.
Now bringing to you the latest in the world of corporate affairs. At the 25th National ICT Awards held recently, Trionics Private Limited has secured the NBQSA award for the 9th time for its innovative Trio-exam platform in the education category. Meanwhile, Bank of Ceylon announced the issue of 50 million debentures at par value of 100 rupees each to raise 5 billion rupees in capital. Now let's take a look at some of the latest corporate updates in brief.
One of Sri Lanka's most outstanding and reliable IT service providers, Trionics Private Limited, has secured its 9th MBQSA award at the 25th National ICT Awards recently for its innovative Trio-exam platform in the education category. The journey of Trio-exam reflects a commitment to bridge the gap between traditional exams and modern education demands. Further, the success of Trio-exam at MBQSA 2023 underscores its commitment to quality, innovation and education. Meanwhile, the Bank of Ceylon announced an issue 50 million Basel III complaint Tier 2 listed rated unsecured subordinated redeemable debentures with non-viability written down features at 100 rupees each to raise sum of up to 5 billion rupees. The bank further said that in the event of an oversubscription, the bank has the option to issue up to a further 50 million debentures to increase the sum by up to a further 5 billion rupees. In the meantime, HMB Finance PLC announced the resignation of Dilshan Rodrigo, who served as the chairman and the non-independent non-executive director of the company effective from the 22nd of December 2023. In its corporate disclosure, the company stated that the resigned chairman of HMB PLC bears 1 million voting shares of the company as at 22nd December this year. Further, the resignation as such was made in terms of Section 8 of the Colombo Stock Exchange listing rules.
Now in your sports news, Sports Minister Harin Fernando has issued a special gazette notification suspending the registration of the governing bodies for 5 sports in Sri Lanka. Accordingly, the registrations of the governing bodies of the Sri Lanka Archery Association, Sri Lanka Kabaddi Federation, Sri Lanka Wrestling Federation, Sri Lanka Bridge Federation and Sri Lanka Roller Skating Association have been suspended through the new communique dated the 22nd of December 2023. The Sports Minister published the Gazette notification by virtue of the powers vested in him under the Section 33 and 32 of the Sports Law. Additionally, Professor Rear Admiral Shemal Fernando, the Director General of Sports Development Department, has been appointed as the competent authority with effect from the 21st of December 2023 as a temporary measure to proceed with the administrative and other required activities of these sports governing bodies and to call and conduct relevant elections. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching AdaDerana 24. I'm AdaDerana. Have a great night.